Okay, so we welcome back two familiar faces. We have Vincent, Medley and Mike Wheeler, and their presentation now is Numbers Never Lie, Keep It Simple. Welcome back, Mike and Vincent.
After you. Good afternoon, and it's great to be back. We are all refreshed, straight from our tea, so I'm sure you'll be paying very copious attention to our presentation. Numbers never lie. I will start off just by saying real quickly, quick story. I was on a national call one time, and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying it just because that's what happened. And one of the guys at the end, he was like, "Oh man, Vincent, you're the GOAT." And I was like, "Oh man, that's awesome, greatest of all time." He's giving me all these compliments, and I'm just like, that is so great. So I'm giving my team a hard time. I'm telling them, "Oh man, you're talking to the GOAT." You're like, I'm like, I got my chest bumped out, right? And by the weekend, I started asking myself, what was he calling me the GOAT of? Like, he could have been calling me the GOAT of dog poop, but just because I heard the word GOAT, I was all excited about it. And the reason why how that applies to this is that, data is one thing. The data is that I was called the GOAT, but I didn't look behind the numbers enough to know why I was being called that. And that's one of the things that data can do for you. It can tell you the reasons why. And so, Mike, I don't know if you had any opening remarks.
You did it well.
Thank you, sir.
Because you're the GOAT.
I don't actually believe that, but it was nice for somebody to say it. And so obviously, both of us, we've done our introduction. I don't know, Mike, do you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, this is Vincent Medley, the GOAT. There you go, you're good.
So part of today's discussion will be, we'll talk a little bit about data and its value in animal welfare. Is extremely important, and not just from the sake of seeing that there's numbers, but turning data into information is extremely important because you can pull out your spreadsheets, you can talk about the numbers, but unless you know what they're saying, they're not as valuable without that. And then also data in and out of the animal shelter and resources to get started. And we'll talk a little bit about how we view data even outside the numbers. So data is a tool. One of the definitions in animal welfare is that it's a tool for understanding your community's animal resource services needs, inform the organizational programming, and to measure your organization success. All of these things are important, especially for those of you that are making a case with your decision makers within your government, but then also for you to articulate to your teams the impact that they're having. Because data and information is definitely a love language of governments. A common misconception is that data and technology are numbers only, but we found that data is both quantitative and qualitative, which basically means that you are collecting information on a person. All of that's data. So not only is the fact that you brought an animal into your shelter a data, but also the reason why the animal was brought into your shelter. That's all information. Even the report, a case report that a officer writes, that's data as well.
Well, I'm going to start out by saying I don't think data is sexy at all. Okay? I just don't. I don't like data. But I do have a couple questions for you folks out here. Anybody here like scones? Scones. Scones. I'm sorry, that's my southern accent. Scones. How about chocolate chip cookies? Okay. How about raw eggs? You can't make a scone, you can't make chocolate chip cookies without eggs. So think about that. And I personally like the cookie dough. before it's even cooked. So that's data to me. Data to me is something I don't really like, but if I want to get to the sexy part, which is the programs that the community needs, I have to have data to get there. So that's where I take that. And data can come in a lot of forms. We take intake data. Everybody knows the number of animals coming into their shelter, but do we know why they're coming into our shelter? So that one field that we look at in intake breaks down into so many more fields. Yep. We heard earlier the talk about trying to figure out how big an animal shelter needs to be, how many kennels they need, and the difficulty in doing that without the numbers.
Yep.
Outcomes. It's very important. That's how many animals are adopted, returned, transferred, foster care at one time. If we don't know why they're leaving, then we don't know where to put our efforts in. So if we're really successful in adopting, but our return to home rate is 2%, and we're euthanizing 30%, there's a lot of animals out there that need to be returned home. So we shift our focus. Save rate. Save rate, when I first started, there was no save rate. We went just off euthanasia. Then euthanasia became a bad word, I guess, and we went to live release rate and save rates. How many are leaving you? And I challenge every one of you, because in the United States, we still have the problem with getting accuracy in that data. We still have people who say, well, we haven't euthanized a single adoptable animal in the last 27 years.
Right. Right.
Okay, well, who's determining whether that animal's adopted or not, adoptable or not? Every animal in, every animal out, and every animal in the freezer. That's how you count your numbers. Because until we all are on the same page, then none of our information is going to be accurate. We all report in the United States, we have, Shelter Animals Count. We have all these organizations that collect data. But that data is only as good as the information that was put in. So it's important that we use that correct information. Live release rate, total live outcomes, length of stay. That was talked about on several occasions. As a matter of fact, data has been talked about a lot during this conference, and I'm sure we're not done hearing about it yet. But length of stay, it's important to know how long your animals are there. And not only that, which animals are there the longest. Because that gives you another avenue to change, to build a program to get those animals out. After you. And then, of course, you've got all your snakes and birds and spiders that eat people over here, things like that. Y'all adopt those out, by the way?
Snakes.
Just asking. Snakes, birds, spiders. Okay. Go ahead. Well, that's me.
That's you too.
That's me, MW, top right corner, in case y'all didn't notice. We didn't practice this before we left.
This is a very complicated system here that we very sophisticated.
We are miles away. So when you look at your data sets, this is a technical term that, look, it's blocks, little blocks of numbers. You can make them how you need them. I just tell you that you don't know what you need until you need it. So collect every piece of information possible and put it in a box. Your zip code, the date it came in, the type of intake, whether it be a stray, whether it be over the counter, and over the counter being somebody brought it in versus my officer having to go out and get it. Species, dog, cat, male, female, weight, estimated age. I mean, there's breed, health condition, location, heat mapping. Can't do it in my town. Vincent does it all over the country. We only have one zip code, so look, they were all found here. But you never know what you need. But when you go to build a program and you go to figure out why this animal's been here longer than others, or why this set of animals been here longer, and you go to look, and then you realize we didn't collect a vital piece of information, makes it very difficult to build that program out. You can never have too much information. You just can't. Oh, that's me again.
That's you again, Cabot.
Okay. This is from our webpage, Cabot Animal Sports Services. If you get a chance, go to my webpage. We have all of our programs listed there, which I'll go over, I think, tomorrow. This is the First 48 program. It is a program we developed in Cabot. I stole half of it from someplace else because that's what we do in animal welfare.
Exactly right.
We steal, and it's legal.
It's legal.
So take it and do it. This is a program very near and dear to my heart because it changed my facility. It changed the way we operated. My data showed, and I've got lots of data, but my data showed that if somebody did come to get their animal, they came within the first 48 hours. That's what my data showed. It also showed that the animals that did come in, when we put them on a map and penciled them in, because we're one zip code, I can't go by zip code, that they were within a quarter mile of their house. And like Vincent talked about earlier, where my animal shelter is currently, and this is last year we'll have a shelter, where it is currently, we'll explain that some other day. That's my class tomorrow. But anyway, it is by the sewer ponds. So we get blamed for all the smell when realistically it's the people that live in my city. I've had that conversation on Facebook. And it's in the floodplain. So, which is where we typically are, right? The cheapest, furthest away piece of property that somebody donated to them because they didn't want to pay taxes on it or something. But, so nobody was coming to get their animals. 17% of the people, of the dogs that I got in, went home. That's it, 17%. Less than 1% for cats, but cats a whole nother thing. We don't have that problem anymore. 17%. So I looked at the data and I said, well, if only 17% are going home, and those that do go home within 48 hours, then why can't I just ask the community to help? So that's what I did. So when somebody picked up an animal, and why did they pick up that animal? They picked up that animal because they cared. They cared is why they picked up that dog. That's right. 50, 100, 200 people drove by that dog already that morning, but these people cared enough to stop and pick up that dog and put it in their vehicle. So when they come by, and I'm telling you a lot about this program, but we've got time to kill. So when that happened and they decided to pick it up, they showed me that in their heart, they cared. So all we do when they call, and I've got a whole policy and procedure on it now, but we just ask them if they would mind, because they care, and because if you bring it to me, 83% chance it will not go back to the owner. But if you will hold on to it, let me provide you with resources, crate, food, flyer information. If you'll hold on to it for 48 hours, and here's, by the way, here's your appointment to bring it in 48 hours later, if the animal owner doesn't claim it, if you'll do that, you would help out the shelter, but most importantly, you'll help out the dog to get home. And I want to give you a little bit of numbers on this because this is the data that astounded me. 2021, our first full year of doing this, we started in 2020, but our first full year of doing this, we had 594 people say yes.
That's right.
Just 48 hours.
Yep.
I can do anything for 48 hours. I've dieted for 48 hours. Okay? 36 was pushing it. But 48 hours, I did it. So, but we had 594 people say yes. We only had 177 people in 2021 say no. Now, we're not asking them, and we ask them if they're comfortable keeping them. We're not asking them to hold on to dangerous dogs or vicious dogs. Remember, they picked this dog up and put it in their vehicle.
Right.
So how dangerous could it be, right? They were comfortable enough to do that. So of that, 594, 387 dogs went home without ever coming to the shelter. That's 65%. Remember, I was at 17% before. 65% went home. 186 were brought to the shelter. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Because 387 didn't fill kennel space, didn't take up any resources, didn't fill kennels. I didn't have to euthanize any animals. 11 were given away. You know what? I'm okay with that, right? Why wouldn't I be? I've got all their information. If the owner would have called us, we'd have handed it out. 6 people decided to keep the animal. I'm still okay with that. And only 4 didn't, I don't know, because they didn't respond when I called them back. So I say all that to say this. Without knowing the data of my return to home rate, and without knowing how far they were away from the house, the ones that did go home, and without knowing the time frame of which they went home, I never would have gotten that program. And that program has changed our lives. And matter of fact, Haas rolled it out to pilot programs.
We did.
And every one of them saw similar success.
Yep.
So now it's pushing across the country. There are finder to foster programs everywhere. But that 48-hour limit, which was a key component in my program, because of my data, made that successful. Because they had a date and time when they could bring the animal in if it didn't go home. And I wouldn't have got it without the data. So.
And and I'll add to that too, Mike, is that one of the criticisms of a program like this is we're asking people to take responsibility for animals that are not theirs. And the data shows that the best outcome for that animal is to be in a home with a family until they can get back to their family or be rehomed. And so the data made all the difference, and people like Mike and his team and Cabot, even though I guess by some standards they're small, the great thing about Cabot is I can see, like for instance, in a large shelter, I can send them to Mike and say, this is what a finished product looks like. And I want all of you to think about that. When you look at somebody, no matter what scale they are, if you're from a large city and they're from a small city, they can show you a roadmap. Now, you may not be able to do it the way they do it, but you will be able to recreate a lot of the elements and use the resources you have to move yourself in a direction, because he knows what a finished product look like. And I wouldn't have in some of the shelters that I was so overwhelmed with intake. So part of in terms of data outside of your organization, you've got to look at, number one, community engagement, which how does the community interact and engage with your shelter, but then also with your resources that you provide. What are the pet support needs? What are the values in your community? What are the economic challenges? We talked about that earlier. Be understanding of that. Industry trends, whether it's the use of microchipping, healthcare information, best practices. What's happening outside more than just the animal welfare world and the shelter that you live in that's affecting your community? Because we're talking about people and we're talking about families. These are not just numbers. Until we understand that, it's a much harder. I was telling someone in the during our last tea break that it was so powerful for me to understand and to look at animals as individuals, because then it elevated each individual animal and it increased the urgency in my life and my ability to help and connect with those who had already seen animals that way. But a lot of times when you have that large volume of animals coming in, you think, okay, there was 50 cats that were brought in today. That's all I know. I can't stop down to think about 1 or 2. And that's one of the key missing elements in some of your counselors in terms of, like, as an animal management officer, that was, I just had to be concerned with the group, and I couldn't really be concerned with the individual because it was so overwhelming. But that was because I didn't have programs and I didn't have support at the time. But once I started getting programs and support, which are backed up by the data, that allowed me to change my point of view, and it really transformed my career. And help, and by that I mean that it helped me help a lot of animals and families. Funding and policy, data is extremely important for that, because when you go to these, some of you that are sitting down, when decision makers are making decisions, they're going to make it based on numbers a lot of times. So make sure you have the numbers. Also tell a compelling story behind the numbers, but you got to make sure you have the data to back it up, because at the end of the day, they're going to start, the people that are going to be looking at this when you're not in the room are going to need something to back up what you told them. And then also human welfare and public safety, measurable trends and best practices in human welfare and field services that improve community welfare. Field services to me is the most important outreach program in animal welfare. The question is, what tools did the gods give them to be out there in the community? Because we drive in the community every day, the officer does. We see the problem at the point of origin. We can help solve the problem at the point of origin if we are given the tools, and data is one convincing way to win over officers, and also to push programs in certain directions. Also, once again, the community needs and trends, heat mapping, understanding where your, where your hotspots are, where the needs are, where also potentially resources are for you to assist people that are in need, and then also understanding some of the basic things like, where your adoptions come from, where your stray intake comes from, where lost and found animals. These will help you craft programs. Do I need a microchipping program in a certain area? Do I need more outreach when it comes to veterinary services in a certain area? Housing issues. One of the mistakes that we had made up until now is that we weren't, like animals are pouring into the shelter. We don't know why. But the reality is because we couldn't know why, because our job is not to know housing policies. But there are agencies within the government whose job that is. That's why we always talk about partnering, understanding, and don't just borrow the language, actually learn from those that are in that discipline. And not only learn from them, allow them to lead that part of the charge, so that you can continue to stay on your mission, but at the same time, the families are served because you all are leveraging the power of your collective information.
Vincent, real quick.
Yes.
Just a couple things here real quick, off script. There's no script. You should
Yeah, we have no
it's
script.
Blank.
We had them full
good.
for a while. Thanks for
We're
telling
good.
them, Mike.
Hey, we get back to the community needs portion of that. The question is, do you know what your community needs?
Mm-hmm.
Have you been door to door in your community?
Yeah.
Have you put out surveys in your community that aren't on your Facebook pages? It's really easy for us to get the information we want to hear when we put it out to the people who listen to us.
That's right.
So what we've done in our community with Haas, we're going door to door in those underserved communities to gather the information and the data we need to know what programs we need to implement. Tomorrow you'll hear in one of our presentations about the vast number of programs we have. A lot of those are underutilized. Why? Because Mike Wheeler decided they were good programs.
Right.
Mike Wheeler decided one night at 2 o'clock in the morning when he couldn't sleep that this is what everybody needed. But get out in the community, door to door if necessary, and your officers is your avenue in. We have a program, talking about program, we have time. We have a program I call the 3 Ps, only because I had no fancy name. Sometimes you just run out of ideas. But 3 positive contacts. My officers are in the community every day. They see and talk to more people every day than my police officers do, than my firemen, than my city hall, than my shelter staff does. my animal management officer, animal control officers, animal service officers, whatever we name them, they talk to more people. So what did I do? I gave them 3 more people to talk to. I said, every day while you're going to a call, you will stop, and if you see somebody outside in their flower bed or working on their car, and you will get out and you will hand them a card and say, hi, I'm Officer Wheeler. Just wanted to stop and say hi, introduce myself, let you know I work for the Cabot Animal Support Services. If there's anything you or your neighbors need, give me a call. That's it. Nice to meet you. Have a great day. Get their information. I get three names and addresses a day. That's it. That is an opportunity, because a lot of y'all have officers, like I have officers who, when the truck rolls up, doors are shutting, window shades are going down, they're afraid you're going to steal their dog or their child, one of the two. That's how you change that culture. But now, starting November 1st, they will be out there with the surveys, going door to door, filling out surveys for people so we know what they need. And transparency is what we all have to have. So put it on your webpage, put it on your website. If you euthanize 98%, put it out there. Don't hide behind the numbers. If you're transparent, people will trust you. If they think you're hiding something, they won't trust a thing you ever tell them. So put it out there. Sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you, Mike. And behavior support is also on there. And just as a note, based on what Mike said, the difference between judgment and what Mike is talking about is a decision. Making the decision that you are going to assume good intent from people and really work towards the positive. It makes a big difference, and it really helps in terms of your team and their attitude towards the public, as well as your own attitude. I mean, sometimes it's easy to be negative, but it's like a muscle. You continue to work out that positive muscle that continues to help create that positive energy within your community, and it makes a big difference. Is that me? Yes. Some of the resources, I know, right? Some of the resources to get you started are, we have a hospital resource center. Also, Shelter Animals Counts. They're one of our national partners, and we use them a lot. I believe Mike's involved. His shelter provides data to them as well. The Australian Shelter Management Software, which a lot of you probably already use, but if not, that's another resource for you. The AIAM Background Information CAT Management Metrics and Data Collection, and then also the guide to use the AIAM Sample Animal Data Spreadsheet and AIAM Sample Data Spreadsheet. And then also, we do have a webinar entitled "Are You Measuring What Matters?" webinar, and also we have several other tools, and so these are some of the resources available to you.
And that's it.
That's right.
We're early. We're leaving room for the end.